I never thought I'd be one of those mothers struggling on the subway during rush hour, but there I was, drenched from a sudden downpour, with my 3-year-old son crying in his stroller and my 5-month-old daughter strapped to my chest in a carrier. Surrounded by strangers who couldn't hide their stares of judgment, my arms ached from holding 2 grocery bags filled with diapers and formula. Every lurch of the train was a battle to keep my balance, to keep the stroller from rolling, to keep myself from dissolving into a puddle of sheer exhaustion on the grimy floor. This wasn't my life. Or at least, it wasn't supposed to be. 3 weeks ago, I had a car. A beautiful, safe, reliable SUV that my dad bought for me when my daughter was born. It was my freedom. It was the tool that allowed me to be a competent mother, to get to doctor's appointments, to buy groceries without a military-style operation, to just escape the 4 walls of our small house for an hour. But for 3 weeks, that car had been gone, and with it, my independence. My husband, Trevor, didn't seem to care. In fact, he was the reason it was gone. The train screeched to a halt at the 59th Street station, and the doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss. A fresh wave of damp, weary commuters pushed their way in, jostling me and making my son wail louder. I squeezed my eyes shut for just a second, a silent prayer for teleportation, for a moment of quiet, for help. When I opened them, I saw a familiar face through the throng of people. It was a face I hadn't expected to see here, in the underbelly of the city. It was my father. He was standing on the platform, his expression shifting from casual observation to shocked recognition. He pushed his way through the departing crowd, his eyes locked on mine. The doors started to chime, signaling their imminent closure. Without a second thought, he wedged himself into the packed car just as the doors sealed behind him. He's not supposed to see me like this. Not like this. He gave me everything to make sure my life wouldn't be a struggle. And here I am, the very picture of it, defeated, publicly. The thought burned through my shame. He navigated the crush of bodies until he was standing in front of me, his expensive wool coat a stark contrast to my rain-soaked hoodie. He didn't say hello. He just looked at me, at the tear tracks on my son's face, at the strained expression I was trying so hard to hide. He gently took the heavy grocery bags from my hands, his grip firm and steady. "Jess," he said, his voice low and tight with a mixture of anger and concern. "Where is your car?" The question, so simple and direct, shattered the fragile composure I'd been holding together for weeks. A single hot tear escaped and rolled down my cheek. I couldn't answer. I just shook my head, the motion barely perceptible. As the train lurched forward into the dark tunnel, the noise of the wheels on the track seemed to scream the answer for me. Gone. Everything was gone. My father insisted on taking a taxi from the next station. He handled everything with a quiet efficiency that felt like a lifeline. He collapsed the stroller, carried my son, and hailed a cab in the driving rain as if by magic, while I just clutched my daughter and the groceries. The taxi ride to my parents' house was mostly silent. The rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers was the only sound for a long time. My son, exhausted from his tantrum, had finally fallen asleep in his car seat. I stared out the window at the blurry city lights, feeling a profound sense of shame. "They have the car, Dad," I finally whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "Trevor's sister, Kara. She took it 3 weeks ago. She won't give it back." My father's knuckles were white where he gripped the handle above the door. He didn't look at me, but I could feel the fury radiating from him. "She took it?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "Explain that to me, Jess." And so, the whole sordid story came pouring out. It started at one of Trevor's mandatory Sunday family dinners. His family, his 2 sisters, Kara and Megan, and his mother, always treated these gatherings like a royal court, where they were the arbiters of taste and class, and I was the perpetual outsider. They had a way of speaking to me that was coated in sugar but left a bitter aftertaste, full of backhanded compliments about my background and thinly veiled criticisms of my parenting. Trevor, of course, never saw it. Or he chose not to. That particular night, Kara had been complaining endlessly about her own car being in the shop. The repairs were supposedly astronomical, and she was so stressed about how she'd get to work. I felt a flicker of sympathy, a stupid, naive flicker. We were gathered around his mother's antique dining table, the air thick with the scent of roasted lamb and simmering resentment. Kara dramatically sighed, pushing a stray blonde curl from her face. Honestly, this mechanic is bleeding me dry. Another 2,000 just to get it running. I don't know how I'm going to manage without it." She paused, her eyes sweeping over the table, landing on me with a sudden, manufactured warmth. "Jess, you're home all day with the babies anyway," she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You couldn't possibly lend me your car for just a few days, could you? Just until mine is fixed? It would be a lifesaver." I knew it was a bad idea. I felt it in my gut. That car was mine. Not ours, mine, a gift. My one piece of leverage, my one escape route, in a life that was feeling increasingly claustrophobic. But saying no in that house was like declaring war. I pictured the car, my safe haven, in her hands, a knot tightened in my stomach. Trevor immediately jumped in, placing a heavy hand on my shoulder, his fingers digging in slightly. "Of course, she'd be happy to help." He smiled at his sister, a proud, magnanimous smile that was meant to project generosity but felt like a leash tightening around my neck. "Family helps family, right, Jess?" he prompted, his eyes daring me to disagree. The pressure was immense. All eyes were on me. His mother was nodding approvingly, her gaze sharp. Megan was smirking, already anticipating my acquiescence. Trevor was looking at me with that expression, the one that said, "Don't you dare embarrass me." So I did what I always did. I gave her the spare key, my stomach churning with anxiety. "Just for a few days," I'd stipulated, trying to sound firm, trying to cling to some semblance of control. Kara had thrown her arms around me, her cheap perfume suffocating. "You're the best, sis," she'd chirped, a triumphant glint in her eye that made my blood run cold. Of course, a few days turned into a week. My polite texts went unanswered. Each morning, I'd wake up, check my phone, and see nothing. Then I'd stare out the window at the empty driveway, the anxiety coiling tighter. One afternoon, after another unanswered text, I finally got her on the phone. "Kara, hi. Just wondering when you might be able to drop off the car? It's been a week now, and I really need it for the kids' doctor's appointments." Her voice, when she finally answered, was breezy, as if I was inconveniencing her with my petty concerns. "Oh my God, Jess, relax. I'm just so swamped at work, you have no idea. And honestly, it's been a nightmare, getting my car back. You're home all day, what do you need it for? I'll get it back to you soon." The word soon was drawn out, dismissive. She hung up before I could respond. Soon never came. A few days later, my frustration boiled over. "Trevor, this is ridiculous," I exclaimed, catching him as he walked in the door from work. "Kara is refusing to give me back the car. She just hung up on me. I'm completely stranded here." He tossed his keys on the entry table with a clatter, his jaw tight. "Why are you being so selfish?" he snapped, turning on me immediately. "My sister is in a tough spot. Her car's still in the shop, I checked. It's just a car. You're making this a huge deal and causing problems in my family." He glared at me, his eyes cold. "Can't you just manage for a little longer? How important are those doctor's appointments anyway? We're a family. Family helps family." I stared at him, bewildered by his sudden aggression, by the casual way he dismissed my needs. "It's not just a car, Trevor. It's my car, the one my dad bought for me. And yes, the appointments are important. I can't just walk two small children across town in this weather." He scoffed, turning away. "You're being overdramatic. Just take a cab. Or the bus. People do it all the time." He waved a dismissive hand, ending the conversation, leaving me standing there, fuming and helpless. The argument escalated over the next few days until he and his sisters ganged up on me. It was a three-front war. One couldn't possibly win. They cornered me in our own living room one evening, when they'd all come over unannounced, ostensibly to visit the kids. But really, I suspected, to reinforce the message. Megan leaned forward from the couch, her voice low and venomous. "You need to learn your place, Jessica," she sneered, her eyes glittering. "Just because my brother has money now doesn't mean you were raised with any class. You should be grateful we even let you into this family." Kara stood beside her, arms crossed, a smug, triumphant look on her face, nodding in agreement. Trevor just watched, his expression cold and hard, a silent accomplice. He didn't defend me. Not once. I told my father all of this, my voice cracking with remembered humiliation. I told him how they'd said if I didn't stop being difficult, I'd see what life was like without his support. And I was seeing exactly what that life looked like. It looked like being trapped, isolated, and humiliated on a crowded subway. My children crying, my spirit shrinking. The taxi pulled up to my parents' house, a warm, welcoming brick colonial that was the complete opposite of the tense modern box I shared with Trevor. My mother was waiting at the door, her face etched with worry, already anticipating the worst. My father paid the driver, then turned to me. His eyes were clear and hard as steel. He took my face in his hands. "You didn't fail at anything, sweetheart," he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. "You were manipulated and bullied by a pack of cowards." He paused, his gaze unwavering. "But this ends now." The certainty in his voice was like a physical anchor in my swirling sea of fear and confusion. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sliver of hope, a fragile, desperate spark in the darkness. The next morning, my dad made a series of quiet phone calls from his study. I could hear the low, serious murmur of his voice, but I couldn't make out the words. He emerged an hour later with a grimly determined look on his face. "I've hired a man," he said simply. "A private investigator. He's gonna find out what's really going on with that car. And with Trevor's finances, I have a feeling this isn't about a broken-down vehicle." A private investigator? It felt so dramatic, so extreme. Part of me, the part that had been conditioned by Trevor to avoid conflict at all costs, wanted to protest, to say it was too much, that we could just talk to him. But another, stronger part of me knew my dad was right. Talking hadn't worked. Pleading hadn't worked. This was a game, and I had been playing it all wrong. My dad's second instruction was more direct. "I want you to go back to the house, Jess, but only to pack a bag. Pack everything you and the children can't live without. Important documents, clothes, sentimental items. I want you ready to leave at a moment's notice. Don't tell Trevor what you're doing. Just say you're organizing the closets. I'll come and get the bags this afternoon." Going back to that house felt like walking into enemy territory. The air was thick with resentment, even though Trevor was at work. I moved quickly and quietly, my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I packed birth certificates, passports, my grandmother's jewelry, the children's vaccination records. I packed the kids' favorite toys and blankets, items that felt like anchors to their innocence. As I was in Trevor's home office looking for our marriage certificate, tucked away in a file cabinet I rarely touched, I noticed a leather-bound folder on his desk that I didn't recognize. It was partially hidden under a stack of mail, almost as if someone had tried to conceal it in a hurry. Curiosity, or perhaps some primal instinct for self-preservation, made me open it. Inside was a single document, a bill of sale from a used car dealership on the other side of the state. My stomach dropped. It was for a 2024 model SUV, dark gray. My SUV. And then I saw the details that made the blood freeze in my veins. The seller's name was listed as Trevor, and his signature, a messy, forged version of his real one, was already on the dotted line. The buyer's information was blank. The date was for 2 days from now. It wasn't a loan. It was never a loan. This was theft. He was selling my car. The car my father bought for me. The one thing that was unequivocally mine. He was going to sell it behind my back and take the money, the fights, the gaslighting, Kara's fake sob story. It was all a coordinated performance to get the key and the vehicle away from me long enough to sell it. The sheer calculated cruelty of it took my breath away. This wasn't just about control or bullying. This was about money. But why? Trevor made a good living? We weren't struggling. Or so I thought. I snapped a picture of the document with my phone and sent it to my dad without a word. My fingers shaking so violently I almost dropped the phone. I carefully placed the folder back exactly where I'd found it, my hands trembling. This was no longer just a domestic dispute. This was a crime. My phone buzzed almost immediately. It was my dad. "I'm on my way. Be ready." The confrontation I had been dreading for weeks happened that evening. But not in the way I expected. Trevor came home to find me playing with the kids on the living room floor, bags packed and hidden in the nursery closet. He was in a strangely good mood, which immediately set my teeth on edge. He leaned down to kiss me, and I had to fight the urge to recoil, a visceral repulsion. "Hey, I was thinking," he said, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I recognized from his poker nights. "Things have been tense lately. I know the car thing has been a mess. Kara's an idiot." He forced a smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "How about this weekend we get away? Just us and the kids. We'll rent a place by the lake. Get some fresh air. It'll be great for us, don't you think?" For a fleeting second, I almost faltered. It was the Trevor I had first fallen in love with. Charming, apologetic, making grand gestures. Maybe I had it all wrong. Maybe the bill of sale was a misunderstanding, a clumsy attempt to help Kara that went sideways. But then I saw the faint sheen of sweat on his brow, the way his eyes didn't quite meet mine. This wasn't an apology. It was a distraction. He was trying to get me out of town for the weekend so the car sale could go through without a hitch. My mind raced back to his online poker habit, the one he swore he'd quit a year ago after a huge fight. He'd said he'd put his family first then, too. It had lasted a month. This was just another lie in a long, long line of them, more desperate than the rest. "I can't, Trevor," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, considering the earthquake rumbling beneath my calm facade. "The kids and I are going to stay with my parents for a while." His smile vanished, replaced by a scowl. "What are you talking about? Why?" "I just think we need some space. I need to think." "Think about what?" he scoffed, his tone shifting instantly from charming to menacing. The mask fully dropped. "About how you're overreacting about a stupid car? It's just metal and plastic, Jessica. My sister needed help. What's yours is ours. We're a family. It's not about the car anymore, Trevor. It's about the lies. It's about the way you and your family treat me." He took a step closer, his frame seeming to fill the entire room, looming over me. He was trying to intimidate me, using his size as he always did when his words failed. "You are being ridiculous. We're a family. What's yours is ours. You need to stop this selfish nonsense right now." But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. I was angry. The discovery of the bill of sale had burned away the fear and left behind a core of cold, hard rage. I stood up, putting myself between him and our children, a protective barrier. "No, I'm choosing to not be threatened in my own home. I'm choosing to not have my things stolen from me. I'm choosing to protect my children from this." His face contorted with fury. "Stolen? Are you insane?" he yelled, his voice echoing in the silent house. "You're going to see what life looks like without my support." Just then, the doorbell rang. Trevor's head snapped toward the door, his tirade cut short by the unexpected interruption. Through the frosted glass, I could see the unmistakable silhouette of my father. "You called your dad?" Trevor hissed, a look of utter disbelief and dawning panic on his face. "You're running to Daddy because you can't get your way? Pathetic." "I called my dad because I need my family," I said, walking to the door and opening it wide, my chin held high. My father stepped inside, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere in the room. He wasn't as tall as Trevor, but he carried an unspoken authority that Trevor, with all his bluster, could never hope to possess. He looked from my face to Trevor's, his expression unreadable, but his eyes held a steely glint. "Jess is coming home with me, Trevor," my father said, his voice quiet but absolute. It wasn't a request. Trevor laughed, a harsh, ugly sound devoid of humor. "She's not going anywhere. She's my wife." He pointed a trembling finger at me, his voice shaking with impotent rage. "If you walk out that door with those kids, don't bother coming back." I didn't even hesitate. I walked past both of them, into the nursery, and came back with my daughter in my arms and my son holding my hand. I grabbed the diaper bag from the hall table. I looked Trevor dead in the eye, my gaze unwavering. "Don't worry," I said, my voice devoid of all emotion, a hollow echo of the love I once felt. "I won't." I walked out the door and didn't look back. The drive to my parents' home was a blur. My dad didn't ask questions, he just drove, his silence a comforting presence. When we got there, he helped me get the kids settled in the guest rooms that my mom had already prepared. I felt a wave of doubt wash over me again, a cold current of fear. Had I just destroyed my children's lives? Torn their father away from them? Was this the right choice? I sat on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The vision of Trevor's furious face, his threat to never come back, replayed in my mind. What if I was wrong? What if I'd chosen vengeance over their stability? The uncertainty was agonizing. My dad came in and sat beside me, placing the picture of the bill of sale on the nightstand. "Look at that," he said softly, pointing to the image on my phone. "That is not a man who loves you. That is a man who is using you. That is a thief. You didn't destroy anything, Jess. You escaped." He put his arm around me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt safe. Finally, someone had seen what was happening and believed me without question, validating my gut feelings. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of strategic planning. My father's private investigator, a former police detective named Mr. Harrison, came to the house the following morning. We met in my father's study, a room usually reserved for quiet reading. Mr. Harrison, a man with shrewd, intelligent eyes and a perpetually serious expression, laid out his findings. "Ms. Thompson," he began, addressing me directly, "your suspicions were well-founded. Mr. Thompson is indeed in considerable financial distress. Our preliminary investigation confirms he's drowning in gambling debts, over $100,000 to various shady online lenders. He's been liquidating assets for months, from investment accounts to valuable personal items. Your SUV was just the next big-ticket item on his list." He slid a stack of printouts across the mahogany desk, each one a stark record of Trevor's hidden life. I felt a sick lurch in my stomach as I saw the figures, the anonymous names of offshore betting sites. "As for Kara Thompson," Mr. Harrison continued, "we discovered her driver's license was suspended 3 weeks ago due to 2 prior DUIs. She's also in the middle of bankruptcy proceedings. The story about her car being in the shop? Likely a fabrication to secure a vehicle she couldn't legally drive herself." My jaw dropped. They weren't just bullies, they were desperate, reckless criminals, a pack of vultures circling for anything they could take. The layers of deception, the sheer audacity were staggering. My father's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Albright, joined us that afternoon. She listened to Mr. Harrison's report with a grim nod, then laid out the plan, her voice calm and authoritative. "Jessica, with this evidence, we're not just going to get the car back. We're going to use Trevor's attempt to sell your vehicle as leverage, to dismantle their entire scheme, legally and decisively. Mr. Harrison's findings about his debts and Kara's license will be critical." On Saturday morning, the day the sale was supposed to happen, we drove back to the house, but this time, I wasn't alone. We were a convoy. My father and I were in his car. Behind us was Ms. Albright in her own vehicle, and behind her, a marked police car, its presence a stark, undeniable statement. My stomach was a knot of anxiety and grim anticipation. This was it. We pulled up to the house. Through the big picture window, I could see them all inside. Trevor, Kara, and Megan. They were laughing, drinking mimosas, celebrating, no doubt, what they thought was their victory, my defeat. My heart hardened. They were celebrating the theft of my children's security, celebrating my pain. We all got out of our cars and walked up the driveway together. My father, me, Ms. Albright with her leather briefcase, and a calm, uniformed police officer. The looks on their faces when Trevor opened the door were worth 1,000 nights of lost sleep. The laughter died in his throat. His face went from smug to confused, to terrified in the space of 3 seconds as his eyes darted from my father, to Ms. Albright, to the police officer. "What is this?" he stammered, his voice thin. "We're here to discuss the return of my daughter's property," my father said, his voice like ice, each word a hammer blow. We stepped inside. Kara and Megan were on the couch, their smiles frozen on their faces, mimosas halfway to their lips. The officer remained politely by the door, his presence a silent, undeniable threat, a stark reminder of the gravity of the situation. Ms. Albright didn't waste any time. She opened her briefcase on the coffee table and laid out the documents one by one. Mr. Thompson, she began, her tone crisp and professional. This is a copy of a bill of sale for a vehicle registered to my client, Jessica Thompson. It bears a signature that appears to be a forgery of your own. Trevor stared at it, speechless, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. We also have a comprehensive report detailing over $150,000 in outstanding gambling debts owed by you to various online creditors, she continued, sliding a thick, bound report across the table. It would appear you have a clear motive for attempting to liquidate assets that do not belong to you. His face turned a pasty white. He looked at me, a desperate, pleading look in his eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy. Just a vast, cold emptiness where my love for him used to be. Ms. Albright then turned her attention to Kara, who visibly flinched, and Ms. Thompson, we have records from the DMV indicating your license is currently suspended, meaning for the last 3 weeks you have been operating a vehicle illegally, a vehicle you obtained under false pretenses. Kara's jaw dropped. She looked at Trevor for help, but he couldn't even meet her gaze, already defeated. The officer is here to ensure the peace and to take a formal statement from my client regarding the fraudulent bill of sale, pending further investigation into felony forgery charges, Ms. Albright clarified. As a courtesy, he will observe the return of her vehicle. Forgery, Mr. Thompson, is a serious felony. That was the final blow. The fight went out of him all at once. He slumped onto the arm of the couch, a broken man. The arrogant bully, the manipulative husband, the master of my universe. He was gone. Faced with actual consequences, he had nothing. Megan started to cry, a pathetic, sniffling sound. Kara just stared into her mimosa, her face a mask of disbelief, her carefully constructed deception crumbling around her. I walked to the small dish by the door and picked up my car keys. They felt heavier than I remembered, solid and real in my palm. I turned to leave, and the officer held the door open for me. I didn't say goodbye. There was nothing left to say. As I walked to my car, I could hear Ms. Albright's voice from inside, calmly discussing Trevor's options. They were not good. It was a bright spring afternoon, months later. My daughter Lily gurgled happily in her car seat in the back of the SUV, while my son Leo chattered excitedly about the ducks we were going to feed at the park. I pulled into the small parking lot of the community center, the sun warm on my face. The car, my car, still gleamed from the detailing my father had arranged. A symbolic cleansing, a fresh start. Every time I turned the key, I felt a surge of gratitude and quiet power. It was more than just a car now. It was a testament to my escape, my survival, and my strength. My new apartment, smaller than the house I'd shared with Trevor, but filled with light and laughter instead of tension and fear, was just a few minutes away. My parents had helped me find it, and it felt like home. As I unbuckled Lily and lifted her into the stroller, Leo pulled on my hand. "Mommy, ducks now?" he asked, his eyes wide. I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached my eyes. "Ducks now, sweetie? And then maybe an ice cream." The world was a different place. The divorce was finalized. Trevor's legal troubles with creditors and the forgery investigation were ongoing, entangling him and his sisters for years to come. I had full custody, a job I loved that allowed me flexibility with the kids, and a life that was finally, truly mine. I was taking my kids to the park, to playdates, to the library. I was living my life on my own terms. I was driving my own life now, and I was never giving anyone else the keys again.